This is episode 185. We are talking about thinking analytically to ease worry's grip. Welcome to Wellness in Every Season. We talk all things wellness to help you align yourself, align with your goals, find balance in your life, and just recalibrate yourself. If you are listening for the first time, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And let's get started in the rest of the podcast. I have with me Joan K. Peters. She was born in New York City and got her PhD in comparative literature from the University of Chicago. She's published a novel and 2 books about women and work and is a professor of literature and writing at California State University at Channel Islands. She lives in Ohio. I think I said that right. Did I say that right, Joan? With her husband, dogs, and chickens. Her new book is Untangling, a memoir of psychoanalysis, and you can learn more at untanglingjoan.com. Joan, I'm excited for this conversation because it sounds like a journey, and I can tell you care very much about people. Thank you for being on. Where would you like to start?
Most people are curious about who am. I'm retired, a professor of literature, ended up writing a book about psychoanalysis. So I can begin by telling you a little bit about that.
I'm sure there's a journey, a story.
Absolutely. Why would anybody go into psychoanalysis? I didn't even know what it was when I stumbled in. But I was in my 20s, which is a rough time. It's when you confront yourself in the world. No more blaming anybody else for what goes wrong. And I had always had these just big nightmares. And my partner at the time, we were new lovers, and she said, people don't wake up in the middle of the night screaming. And I think you ought to see somebody. And that was how I began. I didn't know what I was getting into. I saw a therapist who turned out to be a psychoanalyst. And many psychoanalysts see people in regular old therapy. And then if it turns out that somebody wants and needs a deeper and more complicated dive into themselves and their background, it'll turn into psychoanalysis, which happened with me. Shortly after I started with her, we began to talk about the nightmares. And again, I was just telling her my problems, and one of them were these nightmares. And she began to ask me about my childhood. And what was so strange is I couldn't tell her very much. I knew nothing about my childhood before I was 5 because my father died when I was 2, and my mother remarried when I was 5. We moved to a new apartment, and my brother and I were not told, but it was clear we were never to mention where we lived before, who our first father was, nothing. It was a sealed mystery. So I didn't know anything to tell her. She sent me to ask people, my brother, my mother, my cousins I didn't know. I became Watson to her Sherlock Holmes. Little by little, we uncovered enough for her to say to me at one point, it was one session that changed from therapy to psychoanalysis, where she listened to my story insofar as I was reporting back what I had learned that week. And she said, you were the angel of death. When I was born, the week before I was born, my father had been diagnosed with cancer. And it went from there to this wonderful 26-year-old mother of mine now with 2 little kids, gradually moving into, by the time I was 2, nursing a dying. We lived in a 3-room apartment. She didn't have money to put him in a hospital and had to care for him and the babies. And she became, you can imagine, I could imagine how preoccupied she was, how frightened, how all of it. And then in that time, people spared children. They didn't talk to them about death. They're kids, they'll forget about it. As if kids don't forget. They need to be told and talked to about their feelings. I knew I had a father who disappeared because he came back in these nightmares. It all came back. And she was able to decipher all of the coded information in this same nightmare I would have over and over. Different, slightly different, but essentially the same. And that was the moment when I discovered my unconscious. There's another part of me running the show, and I didn't even know. And that began to reveal, untangle the mystery of me. There was the added mystery of why they kept it secret, why we never spoke of it, why this man did not exist in my life, even as a memory. My brother, who was 5 years older, was able to tell me much more. But that began this adventure. And with that session, I signed on. I wanted to go deeper to find out what I had never been told, never understood, and had a sense it was driving my life, even though I thought I was making all the decisions and doing really well. Sometimes we do things and feel things. I had no idea why I would fall into these terrible depressions. I had a great life. I had a great job. I was getting my PhD. I was just finishing my thesis. I had a wonderful partner. So it began to explain what I couldn't explain to myself. And what a relief to have your life make sense. That's how this adventure began. Maybe I can talk about what I mean by thinking psychoanalytically.
Let's go there and ask my questions.
Fast forwarding, once my life had moved along, I began to see and share that to go into psychoanalysis, you have to be very motivated, as I was. I was waking up at night. I had night terrors. If I woke up, I was so frightened, it didn't make sense. I didn't understand where my fears were coming from. I began to look at how we explain ourselves to ourselves. You can take any little thing in your life you can't explain. When my daughter was a teenager, we used to really get into it. I would be beside myself, trying to please her, not being able to say no. This is very typical. Any mother could find herself in this position. I went to a therapist, an expert on teenagers. She would tell me what behavior to change. That was helpful, but it was never enough. I knew there was something more, and it wasn't really changing the situation enough. And little by little, in analysis, this was a second analysis that I had later in my life when I was now a mother in a whole different time period. I wanted to explore more because I saw more problems emerging that weren't solved. And this was a symptom. I started analysis to have a better relationship with my daughter and not to fall into these depressions. And in that, I began to learn. I really understood how my own mother, who very much disappeared into her depression and bitterness. And I think I understand now that she had been through such a traumatic experience in losing my father and in being a 26-year-old with two children and no way of supporting us. She wasn't educated. She couldn't make enough money. She was a model and couldn't make enough money as a model to keep the roof over our heads. So she ended up having to marry another man because that's what women did at that time. I think I lost her at the same time as I lost my father. She withdrew into her own desperation and fear. And she wasn't the kind of mom who could enjoy having a 2-year-old. She was in dire circumstances. My brother, who had 5 years of a normal life with our mother and father, he was able to, I don't know how to put it differently, he was able to love and to be a wonderful brother. In many ways, that saved me because he was kind and understanding. Of course, he was a little boy, so he offered me every Thursday, but it was real generous. What I brought to my teenage daughter and my interactions with her is a fear I did not understand, that if I didn't indulge her in everything, she might. That's what came out when my analyst asked me, what would happen if you said no? And this was a circumstance where she was an older teen. She wanted to go to Hawaii for a job that my husband and I figured out probably involved drug smuggling. She wouldn't have known, she was too innocent. I still couldn't say no. And that was the question. Why not? And what I blurted out, because in analysis, you say whatever comes to mind, was, I'm afraid she won't. Psychoanalytic thinking is really about asking yourself those penetrating questions, not how can I do this better? Not, it's not only about outcomes. It's about, where does this inexplicable problem, where does it start? How can I go back? Stay with, what does it feel like? Where does the fear come from? What's the first time I experienced it? Those questions end up being the most important. That's how you get to what you can't by logic. It doesn't make any sense. Why am I so afraid to say no to my daughter? The analyst had to explain, children love their parents. Of course, she might get mad at you for not giving her what she wants.
She's a teenager, so she'll probably say she hates you, but it's not true.
Well, exactly. And you know enough to know it's not true. I was too insecure and projecting my mother onto my daughter. All my fears about my mother not, it was how I felt as a child. And I didn't understand what she had gone through. I think it's psychoanalytic thinking like that that was incredibly revealing and gave me more power and control. How can you go wrong? It's understanding yourself. Often people are too afraid to look at what causes them pain or to go into a depression and ask what's underneath, what's the sadness, the root of depression. When did I first feel it? Generally, the first time you feel it is as a child.
Why do you think people are afraid to go there?
Because it's so painful. When you and I can say, I was afraid of losing my mother's love, I projected that onto my daughter. But if you go back into a moment in your childhood where you felt your mother didn't love you or didn't care, it's going back into that child's emotional life. The child didn't have defenses. So it was pain and grief and fear greater than what grown-ups feel. You're going back into that vulnerability. And that's frightening. But if you can hold on and let yourself feel it, it will bring you treasure. And the wonderful thing is that you can move beyond it. You can allow it, understand it. People talk about this all the time. Many men, I'm sure you've heard, talk about their father just never even hugged them or never said a warm word or was very demanding or something like that. That's in a way easy to say, but to go back and be that child and look at how painful it is that your father turned away from you or was angry with you. And it's very difficult. It's harder for men. Women can often find comfort in sharing these insights. Men often can't. That's not the kind of thing they talk about. My husband's always joking. All we do is get together and say, how about those men? They don't talk about their feelings with one another way. So, yeah, I think that it is something we can talk about and it's something we can share. My brother and I, for example, continue to share that in our lives. And we find great relief in being able to remember some hard things together and understand each other in terms of how deeply we felt our intense childhood with siblings. Often people don't talk about things they've gone through together but haven't discussed. And that's psychoanalytic talk. You don't need an analyst to share.
So many comments, so many questions. If you're stuck after talking to your girlfriends, that's a good indication that you need to see a therapist. If you're not able to get past a certain point, because I know so many people that I've coached, that I've been in contact with. There's one person who comes to mind where every time she gets a chance, she shares about the same thing. That is an indication that you're stuck. And if you're sharing things that are TMI, dirty laundry,
Yeah.
uncomfortable, like you tell the other person starting to get uncomfortable, that's an indication that you're oversharing and you really should be seeing a therapist.
I
And a
agree.
therapist over a life coach. If you are
I
that
agree.
kind of stuck and it's like in the past, if you're stuck and it's somewhere where you're trying to go in the future, that's where you can see a life coach. How did that change your relationship with your brother?
How did what change my relationship with my brother?
The first time you did psychoanalysis and you started questioning and started to uncover and really went on that investigative journey of why am I having night terrors? Why am I waking up screaming? Or maybe you're not even waking up. The other person is at least.
Yeah.
How did that change your relationship?
That's a great question. My brother then told me he had been in psychoanalysis. He had never told.
That was
Um,
your indication I'm on the right path.
yeah. And I think we both sought out that path in different ways because we were both traumatized. That's the long and the short of it. And I think um, often people don't know. They know what their childhoods were, but they don't realize that they were traumatic. This is trauma. This is what hurts a person. My brother and I, when I came to him and interviewed him, I said, I need to find out about the past. He would send me out there to interview these relatives. Mind you, that some of them we had never met because they were on my dead father's side of the family. So we helped each other. He would send me out like the attack dog, and I would find out information, bring it to him, and then we would parse it out together and figure out what it meant. He knew a little bit. I had brought this new info, and we formed a bigger picture of what had happened. Very recently in a blog, I have a blog for Psychology Today. I wrote about how, although we had the same parents and the same situation, we had totally different experiences because it turned out he was able to share with me once we began to really talk and share together that he had been my mother's little man. You know, she had lost her husband and turned to my brother to pour out her heart. He was 7 and not equipped to handle grown up emotions. He was expected to be a little man. The problem for me, as he explained, was I was ignored. My mother couldn't cope with me. My birth was when everything started to fall apart. And she never really, I think, bonded with me. Whereas my brother, she had a relationship during a happy time and she was able to really bond with him. She wasn't focused on me and she was overly focused on him. His experience was trying to get away and find space for himself, whereas I was just desperate to have, please love me, please pay attention to me. I was I was in a different position. I felt alone. And most of my problems in life stem from feeling so alone or fearing that I would be alone. My partner would leave me, my brother will leave me. I was just scared all for good reason. So we had different, it was like we had different parents. And that's true for most siblings, even if they come from a happy family. By the time you're born, 2 or 3 years later, your parents are different people. You're a different number in the family. It changes. It's wonderful to share with your siblings your different experiences have been. Then you can formulate a story about who your family is that's more accurate and fuller. And that's psychoanalytic thinking too.
I've had this conversation with my oldest. He's going to be 11. So really, my daughter's turning 8 this year, so I can't imagine pouring all of it out on her. I had that conversation with him maybe last year, beginning of this year. Anyway, talking about how he was commenting on how I'm different when it's just me and him. Yeah, I can be different because you understand me well enough. I can be more relaxed when it's just you and me. When you add in different siblings, it's different. And I am a different mom depending on which child is around and how overstimulated I am to begin with. And it just changes the dynamics. We were having a conversation about that, and I was trying to explain to him how it's different because he doesn't have the same needs that his younger siblings. Plus, he has a different personality than they do. I haven't even gotten into the love language part. I plan on sharing that with him soon. He's at the right age to start understanding, and I want to give him the test because I feel like his love language has changed. So I think it'll be very just a huge light bulb for him of understanding, oh, this is how my needs need to be met. This is how other people might need it for friendships and everything. It'll be fun for him. Realizing the ages of my children and how my husband and I are very different when it's just the two of us compared to children. For one thing, we can be more loving, but just in general, we
Right.
can have a conversation and not be interrupted 20 times for
Right.
just trying to get one sentence out. So there's that. And then going back, your mother did not have an education, whereas
Right.
you have a PhD. Found that
Yes.
interesting.
I realized through psychoanalysis and understanding how much of our lives are in reaction to our
Mhm.
childhoods. During the height of feminism, everybody would say, every woman is one man away from welfare. That was true in my household. My mother would never take welfare, she's much too proud, but her husband died and she had no means of earning a livelihood. I saw that and it terrified me. And I was going to have financial security in my life no matter what. And I was determined. Remember, there weren't too many ways for women to earn a living. You could be a teacher or a nurse. I chose teacher, but elementary school teachers did not earn enough to support a household. So I had to up the ante and become a professor. I thought it was the only thing women could do in education. I figured if I worked hard enough, they wouldn't hold it against me that I was a female. Many colleges weren't accepting women, or just a small number. It was very difficult when I was able to make that decision because at least colleges really opened up in a mass way for women. So that was my path, and it proved to be a good one. it did give me financial security, and it did give me a way to lift myself out of our lower middle class household where you had to worry about money.
And then my other question is, you did this regarding your childhood. Have you done any of this work for family history? Some of the trauma repeats itself.
Yes. I put together family trees for both my maternal and biological paternal family. One of my grandmothers was dead, but the other was alive. She couldn't speak English and was illiterate. These were poor immigrants from Eastern Europe. And, I looked into what their lives were, and I was able to find out quite a bit because I had a great aunt who was alive. I interviewed them to find out the whole family history. These people had come over as immigrants. It was heart wrenching to leave their families in Europe, their own mothers and fathers. One of my grandmothers left two buried children. They faced prejudice and intense poverty. My grandmother was an 18-year-old coming here with a 6-year-old boy, and she was pregnant, and she didn't speak the language, and she didn't know where she was. And she just knew she had to get out of Eastern Europe where they were going to, they'd be destroyed. So they were traumatized people. And the siblings helped each other come, as is often the case. There were 10 of them, and they came to New York City and took care of each other until they started fighting. I only knew half of my family because the other half wasn't talking. It was like Hatfields and the McCoys, the families didn't talk to one. And I think that happens a lot, that you begin to see family strife as a way of just pouring out emotions that are so great. These are traumatized people who take it out on one another. And that's what happened in my family. It accounted for why my biological father's family did not come and help take care of my mother and her children. They abandoned us. Imagine, they just abandoned us. They told my mother, "Don't worry, we'll help take care of you." And then they never spoke to her again. Unbelievable. But this is what traumatized people do. They couldn't handle more grief. They had lost so much already. Dead children. That grandmother lost her husband too. They had suffered so much. She made a living. They lived in one room, 5 children, and she made a living by gluing together paper to make bags for the grocery store below. Imagine
Paper to make bags.
paper bags. They weren't manufactured at that time.
Wow.
People made them. And I had a new understanding of trauma. My mother didn't know how to ask for help because nobody taught her. It's important to look at our family histories and to really start asking the question, not who do I blame for my unhappiness, but im- how did this affect me? How did my father's behavior, maybe his drinking or generosity, affect my life? And that's the question that's so revealing. And that's a psychoanalytic question.
And I think once you take care of that, it's going further. You went the extra step of understanding where they were and what they were going through.
Yes.
So you held your inner child, comforted your inner child. You had that place of being extremely naked, of that vulnerability and really having to look at yourself, but then going, hold on, I was a child here. Of course, this isn't my fault. And then understanding, what was my mom going through? What were my grandparents going through? What was the family going through? You took the time to understand them. You were saying with her two children. So you were separating yourself from that. so that you could look at it from a different lens. Here's this person I care about that went through this. Instead of putting yourself as that child, it makes a difference. It made you have compassion,
Yes.
empathy, healing that you needed. I wanted to kind of take this apart for other people who are really stuck, for them to understand this. And this is part of why therapists have you do your origin story.
That's right.
Terrible to do it. It brings them stuff, but it's
Yeah.
amazing to psychoanalyze it and see. So for me, my mom's side of the family, there's addictions and stuff, and I could judge them for that. But when I did my family history, I realized my family left right before Nazis were coming in. And
Yeah.
imagine the survivor's guilt. The rest of the family that was still there and all that they went through, that
Destroyed.
alone would be traumatizing. There's generational trauma from that alone, let
Right.
alone everything else in my family.
Even though the terror took place at your grandparents' or great grandparents' level, that terror is passed down. It's sitting inside you. This is part of your family history. It
Mhm.
doesn't just disappear.
No.
My family fled earlier, but the rest of their family was there and was destroyed by the Nazis. And also, they learned to survive, some of them by abandoning one another. That abandonment in my family history is part of my fear. This sense that people don't take care of one another. I think my mother was alone, but so was her mother. Her mother also, she had a drunk for a husband, and he abandoned her because he didn't work enough, didn't bring home enough money, didn't care about her. He slapped her around. That's abandonment. That's somebody who said they were going to love you and stopped.
And
So,
share and judge him. But
yeah,
if you take it back, what was his childhood like? Where do you put the
exactly.
blame? Maybe the answer is there's compassion, but also
Absolutely.
boundaries. So for me, with my family, they're abusive. And I did not realize how much it was abuse until I had to read A Child Called It in order to pass one of my classes. That
Yes.
was awful. When I would finish my required reading, my husband's like, I'm just here. Do you need a hug? Do you need chocolate? Do you need to sit next to me? Do you need a weighted blanket? He made sure he was available, but he would not touch me or do anything until I'm like, I just need you to hold me or whatever I needed. But he was very available.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean he's available to you guys. He's mine. Sometimes we need things like that to really help us see, wow, we really were abused, instead of being told the whole time, well, you didn't have as bad as this person or this person. Abuse is abuse, trauma is
Right.
trauma. The way it affects your body is the way that you really know.
That's right.
You have things that trigger you and it's just this visceral reaction. That is a sign that you have trauma in your body to work through. It doesn't matter if it should not be as traumatic because of blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. What matters is it is stored in your body and it needs to get out.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's going to get out in the most inappropriate times. You're going to have trouble holding boundaries. And for me, I can have compassion for my parents while not having a relationship with them because they are still so toxic that I don't want my children around that. And
Yeah,
that is my way of undoing that cycle.
right.
Maybe
Right.
over undoing it. We'll see how things turn out. But it's also, I have done the work on myself, done the therapy, and I do have those conversations with my children at their level of, how come we only have grandparents on this side of the family? Do you not have parents? You never talk about your parents. My parents weren't great. Your mommy and daddy really love each other. A lot of families don't have that. Your mommy and daddy adore each other. That's rare. Explaining things like this in a childlike way, when
Yeah.
they see abuse, they can come to me and I can take care of it. I'm not going to style here, putting on rings or whatever, but I can do the proper channels and make sure that child's taken care of, or the other adults in the relationship. Remembering that compassion and boundaries can really go hand in here. And that when we do the work, we can heal so much. Could you imagine not having done the work? You're repeating these patterns. for my family was having children out of wedlock. My husband and I were married for 5 years before we had our oldest. I made sure I picked a really good one. He is
Yeah.
absolutely a winner. I wondered why I always had this deep exhale right after I kissed him. He does it. He just realized he'll do this to kiss me, and it forces me to do that too. I'm like, oh, I feel good when I give you a kiss. Simple things like that. There are things that we can do for ourselves instead of just staying stuck in this bottled up emotional state. And what I'm curious from the next part is, how did your second psychoanalysis change your relationship with your daughter? We all need this. So if we're
Yeah.
on the fence of, do I need therapy? Why do I need to do this? I feel like this will really bring it home.
I must comment on your wonderful description of how your husband and you give each other important affection, kindness, and love that's expressed in the body that many people don't have as children.
No.
And that's often not identified as abuse. Maybe abuse is not the word, but it's its own trauma. Children need to be hugged. They experience life through their bodies. They need to find your lap as a safe place when life is hard for them. You're describing the ways you learned with your husband to appreciate all of that, to understand it. Now you have it to give your children.
They're starting to be the age where they don't snuggle me. And I'm like,
Yeah.
physical touch was not my love language before, but now it's starting to be.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
enough.
There's a moment where what am I, mommy cooties? You're not allowed to touch her. But I'm really talking about small children. Even people who've been abused often associate affection, the warmth of a hug, a kiss, with abuse. So
I
it
did too
doesn't,
until therapy. Absolutely.
you have to understand, go back into your childhood and know if you didn't have all the affection you needed and where that is in your body too. Not to have had what children must have.
Well, that makes me think the other way with your mom, that she needed that and she didn't do that for herself, taking care of you, snuggling you, comforting you, doing the things science tells us we need to do for babies.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
there's a reason right after labor when the baby's still not totally clean, they're putting them on your chest.
Yes,
There is a
that's
reason.
right.
It's for
That's
both
right.
of you.
Anyway, getting back to my second analysis, it made my feeling about my relationship with my daughter clean. It felt like I wasn't piling on top of her all of my own entanglement. And of course, you're never just without your own childhood and so on. Now she's 34. And if I don't hear from her as often as I want, I still can get scared. Maybe she's not going to call. I fear I've lost her, but I understand that's my own projection. I don't let it act out on her. I don't pick up the phone and say, how come you didn't call me? Where are you? What are you doing? Are you okay? Which would make her feel overwhelmed. So I let her have her space. I'm not reactive in that way. I think I can be more authentic and natural with her. I'm not driven by fear.
I'm sure it helped your relationship with your spouse, with you guys being on different pages about Hawaii. And that's just one example. I'm sure there are so many others.
My husband had a similar past to mine in that he had very, very cold, unresponsive parents. And when we came together, we wanted to give each other what we didn't have as children. And we're just so like your husband, we hug each other when we need to be hugged. We kiss, we're affectionate. We're very supportive of one another. We're never cruel to each other. And that just got so much bigger and better after analysis. Because after analysis, I could not only do all those things with my husband, but many of my compulsions dropped away. Part of the way I dealt with how frightened a person I have been is compulsive behavior. So let's talk about a vacation. I have to make all the choices, where we're going to stay, where we're going to go, because I have to be in control. We're going to go to a movie. I have to choose it. And I love now because he's incredibly patient. You want to go to that movie? Okay. You want to visit Cape Cod? We'll go to Cape Cod. He was easy. That wasn't his trouble. He didn't mind. But now I don't have to do. In fact, we just came back from a vacation he planned completely. And I got a kick out of it. It didn't matter whether it was perfect or not. I wasn't afraid of stepping into a hotel room and feeling like, oh my God, it's the wrong place. Driven by these fears that didn't have any meaning, but understanding through psychoanalysis, that's the way I was controlling what was for me as a child a life completely out of control. I didn't know why this man who was my daddy was wasting away. My mother had to give him shots of morphine and he would yell at me. And then he disappeared and nobody ever talked about him again. I didn't know what was going on. My mother very suddenly went back to modeling because she had to earn a living after my father died. So my mother wasn't there for more than 8 hours a day. She had to take the subway to work and it took a while. So she was suddenly gone. There were these babysitters, the cheapest she could find. They weren't very good. And I was left with strangers. I think all of these things made me a compulsive control freak, which was good for my work because I never had late papers, made sure everything was done right, but not so good in personal life. And that's what's so wonderful, to be able to live with so much less anxiety and to just have fun, not worry about whether things are perfect or not be afraid maybe something's disappointing. Before, I'd feel like if I had a disappointment, like I was falling into a 50-foot hole and couldn't get out. And now I feel like, oh, it's disappointing. I'll be sad for a couple of days and then I'll figure out what to do. Very different.
Normal.
Yes, exactly. Normal discipline. I needed a second analysis because in my 20s, I could only go so far. A lot of what my analyst had to do was just support me because I was fragile and I couldn't really have gone as deep as I did with my second analysis. I was older and more secure.
You also had to do more investigative work for your first
Yeah,
one, reaching out to people who are total strangers to you that share some
that's right.
blood.
Yeah. It was exciting. How we get more brazen. Just call people and say, would you mind meeting with me?
Blood.
Yeah, exactly. One was particularly amazing. He was from the side of the family we never talked to on my mother's side. He had a picture of his family. I brought a picture of mine. We put them together and for the first time had the whole family there. And we didn't even know anything about each other's families. So that was exciting. You feel like if you can master at least what your childhood was about and who your family is, you have more of a foundation in life. Many people come from families where you don't talk about certain subjects. That's an emotional fill.
And the funny thing is, sometimes they do it because if it's not talked about, it won't repeat itself. It
Yeah,
does still, which is crazy
I
how
know.
that happens. Where if you're educating people, you can educate them away from it. You can show
Yeah.
them what to do instead of never talking about anything useful.
And when I was a child, it was really believed that if you did not bring children to funerals and you didn't discuss death, they wouldn't notice. Just let them carry on. Children like to play and they'll forget about it. How can you forget about a parent? This is true also when parents got divorced or separated. They'd never talk about it. children will make up stories themselves.
Children are resilient.
No, not true. Not true. They will make up stories much more frightening, blame themselves. Daddy left because I'm a bad child.
And they'll take it their whole life unless they
Yeah,
receive therapy.
that practice of not telling children what's going on backfires badly in families. They carry misery, self hatred, or hurt. From a child's perspective, your father didn't die, he left you. I didn't know about death. He not only left me, but he didn't even want to see me when he was very ill. Of course, I didn't understand that either.
And you were so young, you were needy and cryy and whiny because you were
Exactly.
that age. Natural,
Exactly.
but not helpful with somebody in a lot of pain.
Yeah. My brother, who was 7, it was thought that he should visit with my father was in the only bedroom in the apartment after school every day. And that turned out, he told me not too long ago in our lives, that was very frightening and upsetting to him. My father was very ill and was not a sight a child should be alone with.
That's not
And
how you remember your parent.
nobody thought to put their arm around him, explain what it was about, and spare him if
Well,
it
how
was too
different would
upsetting.
it if your mother had a village? If
Yeah,
you had a support system, it would have been completely.
completely different. Because being alone, she had nobody to soothe her. She was making decisions out of frantic desperation.
And she needs
You know,
somebody with her husband while she's taking care of you and herself.
that's right. And how about somebody just to talk to? She did have her sister. They talked on the phone, and my aunt would periodically take us to give my mother a break. But even with her sister, it wasn't enough.
Versus ever enough, you need
Yeah.
a village.
Yeah. And her sister was far away. She wasn't next door to talk to. I just think the bottom line is they call it talk therapy. We all need talk therapy, talking to one another the way we're talking. Your stories about your own childhood and your own boundaries and the way you explain to your son that your relationship is unique as it is with each of your children. All of this is putting words to sometimes things people feel very alone with.
Because
Yeah.
he feels like he's not seen when all his siblings are around. I said, I absolutely understand it. And I agree. Sometimes it is really that red ticket holder thing. Take your number. It's not your right now. Your number's not been called, or I already took care of you.
Yep.
Back in line. Because we have 4 children.
Right.
Sometimes I'm the only one because there's that gap in time. If my husband is running late because of traffic, that's usually he's home like right before they get home from school. But sometimes he's not home. I'm
Yeah.
the only one. You got to take a number if you all need
Yeah.
me at once.
Yeah.
Otherwise, none of you are getting me overwhelmed. So I can't always be the mom I want to be. That's just reality.
Yeah.
I could feel guilty about it, but you are not a robot. And we're all that
What's
way.
and you're talking with him about it. It's
Uh-huh.
not something that he's alone with.
Yeah.
That to me is the most important thing.
I think with
And
all of
things
it is in
happen,
repair. Because when I'm repairing it with him, he's learning how to repair with other people and repair with himself.
That's right.
That really is what makes a relationship, is how well do you repair things
That's
that
right.
mess up.
Yeah.
If I was the perfect parent, would he want to be a parent?
Yeah.
If I
Would
had
look
the perfect
hard.
parent, I'd be afraid to be a parent because I was gonna do it wrong. I
Right.
had these high standards from this perfect parent. No, it's the repair
Right.
that matters.
Sometimes things don't get 100% repaired, but most of the time when it's repaired, that itself is enough. It
Yeah,
doesn't
that
have to
intention.
be 100%.
I agree. please share this episode. For those saying, okay, I can see how it worked for them, I'm not sure if it works for me. What would you say to them? Or maybe what would you say to the past version of yourself who wasn't quite ready, but you needed to get there?
You have to want to get to a more comfortable place with yourself. I think what happens is that we get to some place that is too difficult to continue on without changing our pattern. For me, that happened when I'm looking ahead. The next thing that was going to come up in my life that was a challenge outside of my relationship with my daughter was retirement. And I was scared because I had a whole identity, I had a busy life, and I was afraid I would be stepping off a cliff into nothingness. And I felt like I needed help. My own resources seemed not to be enough. I didn't want to be so frightened. Here I go again with the same pattern, a boyfriend who doesn't have enough time for me, another failure at work. Why do I keep on messing up at work? Or why do I keep having bosses I don't get along with? Or, whatever it is, when you see that pattern as you point out and you feel stuck or you're anticipating something difficult, and this time you'd like to do it better with less anxiety and unconscious acting out. Maybe it's worth giving it a try, giving psychoanalytic thinking a try, coach, therapist, a psychoanalyst. I think it's worth everything to be happy, to enjoy every day of your life. They don't have to be filled with wonderful events. It can be a quiet day. You can have a cold. It doesn't matter. It's your life. You don't have to experience it with fears, anxieties, and not happiness. You really don't.
I love that. And I think it's really funny. Not in a haha way, but you and I went to therapy for the same reason.
Aha.
Dreams.
For
I was,
dreams.
uh-huh.
You,
I was having night terrors every night and I just wanted to sleep. I was
yeah,
afraid to sleep, so I'd stay up later. And then they came. Now I have interesting dreams where I don't need to watch TV. I already got my own action adventure going on. Where there's
right.
times where I'm not ready to wake up yet. How's that gonna end? I could write a
Yeah.
book on that. It's fun to have different dreams now and just be like, wow, what did I eat before bed? Or what was I thinking? It goes back to that our dreams are telling us something. For me, I can tell I needed to use the bathroom sometime during the night where it's super funny. When I dream about having to go to the bathroom, but the toilet's broken or disgusting, I'll wake
Yeah.
them, "I really do have to go pee," or whatever. But it's just
Yeah.
that reminder that our dreams do have meaning, and that
Absolutely.
when our conscious is going offline and our subconscious is trying to tell us something.
That's right.
So what I love about wellness is tune in with yourself. How are you feeling right now? What is coming up with compulsions or addictions? We are trying to make up for something. What is the something? What's underneath that? And keep
What's
digging
underneath?
until there's nothing else you can dig up.
Hit the words that are most important. What's underneath? Yeah.
And remembering through all of this, you're worth it. A lot of this came back to your worth. We all struggle with that. Even if we have a big sense of worth, we will have little moments. And we are here right now on purpose. Maybe we need to find our purpose, but we have worth and we are worthy, which can be so hard to remember and feel and embody, especially when we've had stuff in our life trying to tell us differently.
Right. Yes. It's so simple. Good parents communicate to even the smallest baby. how worth it they are. They're happy they gave birth to them. They're happy to have them, and they make their lives better, richer, more wonderful. And if you have that as a child, you can see people who seem much happier, more at ease, less driven or upset or reactive. And it's because they really did get that first message of how loved they are. That's the whole it boils down to feel loved as a child and to feel like you belong.
You can still do the work. Don't feel like it's too
Yeah,
late for me. No, it's not.
never too late.
And you can do the work on yourself. Some call it reparenting.
Yes, exactly. A good therapist does. I mean, really teaches you how you can trust people and you can, as you say, repair relationships and rely on the connection.
Repair is the one with yourself. It's not
Yeah,
the person who hurt you. It started to take that tether away.
right.
Tell us about your book because this conversation is based on the book. I'll let people look into it.
Great conversation. I thank you for it. And I thank you for the opportunity of talking about this subject. I'm passionate about
Me
it, as you
too.
can see. I feel like I have a mission to let people know. My book is called Untangling, a Memoir of Psychoanalysis. And it's really about most people don't know anything about psychoanalysis, how it works. I give my own life story as an example, and there's so much people can use in their own lives. Revelation, that's what people tell me who've read it, that it made them turn around and look at their childhoods in a completely different way. They were thrilled to have that new look. So I invite you to that. I have a blog for Psychology Today, and you can find my website at joankpeters.com or untanglingjoan.com. And you can also get in touch with me through the website if you have any questions or there's any way I can be helpful. People do say sometimes, I'm interested in psychoanalysis, but it's so expensive. That's true. For me, my insurance covered it, and it might be worth looking at your insurance policy, or it covered 85% of it, which was enough. But also, there are institutes throughout the country in every major city where they train psychoanalysts. And you can have a psychoanalyst and pay much, much less who's in training. They're going to help you, and they have a supervisor who helps them. And my first analyst was exactly that. She would record our sessions so that she could talk them through with her supervisor. She asked my permission, and I said, great, now I have two experts helping me. And I think I did. And also, it ended up costing $25 a session because she was just in training. If you're interested in psychoanalysis, go to one of the institutes. They
Mm.
have someone for you.
Some insurances cap how many times you can see a mental health specialist a year.
Yeah.
What? You don't do that for medical.
Yeah.
Some don't even have it included in their plan. It makes it the have and the have nots. And it should not be that way. So I love that you're helping us to find that bridge across. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. There are psychoanalysts who keep spots for people on Medicaid. And I know I have a friend who is on Medicaid and found a wonderful analyst in our area, but you don't have to limit yourself to your area now that Zoom has changed our lives.
Yeah, I'm in Maryland, you're in California. Be hard to have this conversation without a plane ride. For sure. I love that part about COVID, how easy it is to meet with
Yeah.
professionals through video. Thank you for your time. This has been amazing because you are not a mental health therapist. You're an expert in a different field. And you are talking about this in a this worked for me. And that is what I want on my show. I want to have experts, but I want to have people who are here saying this worked for me. Because so many of us are stuck and we see other people having success, but that's them. That's too far from where I am. And this is that reminder that no. You can absolutely have this. Especially with what you shared, that we can have it at a cost that matches our budget.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is amazing.
Thank you. This was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope that you found the answers that you needed and you had some amazing aha moments. Please share this episode with others because it helps us align ourselves and then better align the world so that we can seek the healing that we really are looking for. As part of the legal language, I am a certified life coach with a bachelor's in applied health. That is what I am leaning on for this. This is general advice. Take it as such. See you in the next episode.